Hello and welcome once again to the video. As per usual, with this particular series, I shall be taking a look at the most recent Formula One Grand Prix, just from a fan's perspective. Been a fan for many years, more than 40 years, and 45 years-ish. So, yeah, I have a lot of opinions that are not necessarily correct, but of course an opinion is just an opinion, so it's not necessarily a fact. But yeah, from a fan's perspective, basically, not from a technical perspective. My usual routine is to list the finishing order of the 20 drivers, and then the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, and then the rundown of the Constructors' Championship, and then just say a few words, basically. I need to keep this video a little bit shorter this time, actually, because I'm extremely busy today because I'm going on holiday in a couple of days' time, which will cause problems with next week's Hungarian Grand Prix video. But I'll see what I can do about that. I might have to only watch the highlights of that race whilst on holiday and then record a video whilst on holiday. That'll be interesting. We'll see. Right. So, and as you can see, I'm using a different pen. I have actually used these pens before, years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I'm just trying out different pens because I've had a few comments about the other pen not being a bit like sort of a, running your fingernails down a blackboard. That sort of sensation it gives one or two people, possibly more. They're just the ones that commented. So I take that on board. So I'm trying out different pens. See what happens. Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? So it's round number 13. This is a much thinner pen, but maybe I'll write bigger letters. This might still cause the same screaming at the screen because of the scratching. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to list the top 20. Here we go. So we've got, let me put it in focus. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll list, I think you can write neater with this pen. Right, so let's try and get that in focus. Okay, so Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Verstappen, and it was Russell, Albon, and Hamilton, and Lawson, Bortoleto. Wasn't it Gasly, wasn't it? Yes, it was Gasly. Let's check that focus again. Check that focus. 11th once again. Bearman. Hulkenberg. And Tsunoda. 14th was Stroll. 15th was Ocon. 16, Antonelli. 17, Alonso. 18th was Sainz. 19th was Colapinto. 20th was Hadjar. happened to Hadjar. I'm not sure what happened to Hadjar. Okay, so it definitely looks neater, doesn't it, with this pen? Scratchiness is probably the same though. Right. Number 1 in the championship. There he is still. Looking more and more like a champion, has to be said. Norris is 250. Verstappen 185. Russell 157. Fifth is Leclerc. Still, despite all his podiums, 139. Sixth, of course, as ever, is Hamilton. 109. Antonelli. 63. Albon. That's in focus, isn't it? I like to think. I always like to think it's in focus. 54. Hulkenberg. 37. Ocon 27. And constructors. McLaren on 5, 1, 6. Ferrari 248. Mercedes 220. Red Bull 192. Fifth is Williams on 70. Sixth, Sauber on 43. Now seventh, Racing. Now I always reprimand myself when I say Racing Bulls instead of Racing Bull, but I've noticed that it is listed as Racing Bulls everywhere. The team name, Racing Bulls. I see that written down everywhere, see that? So, are they actually Racing Bulls, not Racing Bull? Or is everybody else getting it wrong? And I'm the only one getting it right? I'm not big-headed enough to suggest that, so I think maybe it is Racing Bulls. And I always thought it was just Racing Bull. Anyway, 8th. Aston Martin, 36. 9th is Haas, 35. 10th is Alpine. On 20. Okay, so what did we think of that race? Well, first of all, I'm going to make sure that I put down the fastest lap, which was, I think, Antonelli. It's a bit difficult to find out the fastest lap. It's not an easy task, but I think Antonelli got the fastest lap. Wins, we've now got 6 wins for Piastri, 4 for Norris, 2 for Verstappen, 1 for Russell. So that's 10. Now 10 wins for McLaren. Mercedes have had 1. Red Bull have had 2. That shows what it's like, how important it is to have the consistency of 2 drivers scoring. Ferrari second in the championship, even though Mercedes and Red Bull have won races. But Mercedes and Red Bull have only had 1 driver all season. Mercedes have, for the last, since Canada, have just had 1 driver. And even before Canada, actually, Antonelli's gone. He's struggling a little bit for whatever reason. Wasn't at the start of the season, strangely. but he is as the season progresses. That's why Ferrari is able to take second at the moment. So, what do we think of that race? Okay, so let's, as I say, let's try. Well, we're already up to 10 minutes. I need to keep this video short. Well, pole position, Lando Norris. Now, Oscar Piastri was fastest all weekend. I don't begrudge him winning the race. He was the quickest driver throughout the race weekend. For some reason, it didn't quite work for him in Q3. He, after qualifying, he joked that he deliberately got second on the grid because he knows how that person who's second on the grid can get the slipstream. They have a target to aim for, and it's always better. It's always easier when you've got a target to aim at when you're racing, rather than being the one out front. Of course, you don't have the dirty air from out front. That helps you, but there are so many other advantages from being right behind at the start at Spa, going down the Kemmel Straight after Eau Rouge. And of course, that's what Max did to Oscar in the sprint race. Max just breezed past Oscar comfortably. And that's exactly what Oscar did to Lando. Now, I was watching the post-race analysis by Anthony Hamilton, and he pointed out that a really good tactic by Oscar that seems to have been deliberate, where going into the first corner, Oscar just dummied to the right as if he was going to shoot up the inside. That forced Lando to come across to the inside of the corner at turn 1, which then compromised his exit from turn 1. Meanwhile, Oscar jinked back to the left before turn 1 and was able to straighten up, turn in later, and so straighten up and get a more direct, straight route through turn 1. Plus Lando had a little wiggle as well going through turn 1. And then once Oscar was right behind Lando, there was nothing Lando could do to stop Oscar getting past. Apparently there were some battery pack issues. The battery wasn't working. So that would have hampered Lando, but apparently it also hampered Oscar. I don't think at the same time. I think it was later. Maybe lap 2, something like that. Oscar was suffering with the same problems, I understand. But at the start, I think it was only Lando. But Lando himself has said that would not have kept, even if his battery pack was working, that would not have kept Oscar behind. Basically, you could argue that Lando lost this race because he got pole position. That's a very simplistic way of saying it, but I think mainly Lando lost this race because Oscar was quicker all weekend, all throughout practice. Hamilton, of course, had a bit of a nightmare. He qualified, where did he qualify? 19th or something in the sprint race, due to his rear brakes locking. Now, he blamed himself for that, but still don't know. I think he's still blaming himself. So that must mean that it probably was his mistake, because he's, even after going back to the paddock, he was still blaming himself. So I think that means maybe he did actually do it. He was to blame for that. So that ruined his qualifying for the sprint race. And then he suffered from track limits, which knocked him out of Q1 in the qualifying for the Grand Prix. So terrible race weekend for Hamilton. Bad results, but also mistakes that he made as well. He had a good charge through the field, so he had good fun. Came up to 7th quite quick, helped by the one sort of good thing he did all race weekend was that he was the first one to decide, and I believe it was his decision, to come onto slicks. And I think lap 11, Hamilton made that move onto slicks. Nothing to lose to a certain extent. The leaders were not going to make a risky move like that. But I think if Norris had done, though, then well, that would have helped him no end in the race if Norris had come in the same lap as Hamilton. But it would have been Piastri's choice as to when he came in. But if Piastri had said, no, I don't want to come in yet, and Norris said, well, I do, then in hindsight, Norris would have gained from that. Anyway, yeah, so that was a great decision by Hamilton to be the first one onto slicks. That he jumped up a lot of positions because of that, but he couldn't get past Albon and ended up tailing Albon all the way to the finish. Norris also made a very good decision to go onto hards. Was it a good decision though? Did he have any new mediums left? Not necessarily. I know that Piastri didn't have any brand new mediums left. So had Piastri stopped the second time, he would have had to go onto the hards as well, I think, if he wanted new tyres. So maybe Norris didn't have any brand new mediums. Not sure. But that created the great strategy of Norris being behind, but on tyres that he could go faster on. Not faster tyres, although they were new, so that would give them, that would make them fast to a certain extent. But they were, was it the C1 or the C2? There was a gap anyway. There was a 2 compound gap between the hard and the medium, and that was designed to stop people doing a one-stop race. And pretty much most people anyway, I would say, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the field did a one-stop race, maybe. Was it as much as that? Maybe only half. Most of them only did a one-stop race, didn't they? I think, didn't they? Certainly amongst the leaders, they did. Anyway. The reason why there was a double compound jump between the hard and the medium is because they were trying to. Who is it who makes that decision? Is it the FIA, I guess, who makes that decision? Is it what? I don't know who makes the decision on the compounds. But anyway, it was a tactic to try and stop one stoppers, make it a bit more exciting by having 2 stoppers. That was sort of ruined in the end by the rain, of course, because they all had to come off onto inters quite early on. And then also they didn't have to make sure they ran 2 different compounds then either, because they had already been on the intermediate tyre, which meant they didn't have to run 2 compounds. But yeah, the idea was that you create a gap between the compounds like that. It means that people are probably not going to go onto the hard, because the hard would be too slow, because it's 2 compounds lower than the medium. So what fool is going to go onto the hard tyres to try and do a one-stop when they're going to be so slow? Well, Lando, but he wasn't a fool for doing it, but he certainly took that risk. He was the only one that went onto hards, the only one that went onto hards. I think. Unless someone went onto hards later in the race, but why would they by then? They would go onto mediums, surely, unless they didn't have any mediums. I think Norris was the only one to go onto hards. And it did okay for him, actually. He was able to push. The problem is he was pushing so hard that he made mistakes. I would say that Norris mainly lost the race at the start, of course. Being on pole, it's going to be one of the worst tracks to be on pole because of the Kemmel Straight. But you, as the second driver, as Oscar was, you still have to drive extremely well to be right behind that pole person, the pole sitter, so you can get him on the Kemmel Straight. And Oscar did everything extremely well. That dummy into the first corner, if indeed it was a dummy. And then staying extremely close to Lando going through Eau Rouge. And then that made it a formality going down the Kemmel Straight, just like it had for Max on Oscar the previous day. So that's where Lando lost the race, really. Yeah, the battery pack, well, they both had battery problems. The pit stop, of course, Lando lost time in the pit stop, about a second or so in the pit stop. And he also made some mistakes. Again, it's the... for Norris, you could say, if you were to sum up his season so far, in one sentence, for me, it would be quick, quick, quick mistake, quick, quick, quick mistake. Because he is blindingly fast when he's not making a mistake, but he'll chip away, and then he'll lose a second and a half with a mistake. But he was right on the edge. He was basically trying to do qualifying laps. He could push the hard tyres really hard. Oscar didn't have to. Oscar would have probably wanted to, but he couldn't. So that meant that Oscar was not on the ragged edge like Lando was, lap after lap, trying to catch Oscar. But that simple strategy, I love that simple strategy. And it reminded me very much so of the sort of races you would get in the 80s sometimes, especially the French Grand Prix and British Grand Prix in 1987, where in the French Grand Prix, you had the two Williams of Mansell and Piquet dominating. And in the French Grand Prix, Piquet had a pit stop in the race, Mansell didn't. So Piquet was, I don't know, half a minute behind or something, but he couldn't catch Mansell. Well, he did catch Mansell, but couldn't get past, from what I remember. And then, of course, the following race at Silverstone, it was the other way around. It was Mansell that had the pit stop. So he had the advantage of being on fresh tyres, but he was half a minute behind Piquet. And he did manage to catch Piquet and overtake him with 2 laps to go. So Mansell won both of those races. But I love that simple strategy. The tyres being simple. You either had fresh tyres or old tyres. It was just one compound. There was a qualifying compound, but then in the race there was just a race compound, and just one. And if you wanted to take the risk, you could come in and have a pit stop, but you would lose a lot of time, but you would be on much faster tyres. And it's just that very simple strategy that this reminded me of. It was very simple. It was Norris. Yes, he's lost time, but let's see if he can close in and catch Piastri. But unfortunately, he was not able to. Of course, he didn't have an extra pit stop. Yeah, what did I say that Norris had? Yeah, they both came in on lap 13 and 14. That was another thing that lost Norris time, of course, the fact that because he was the second driver, he had to wait for Piastri to have his stop before he could then have his stop. And that lap delay cost him, and he came out about 8 seconds. Well, he came out about 5 seconds behind Piastri and immediately lost about 4 seconds just in the out lap. So he was about 9 seconds behind Piastri. And it was similar to 87, yes, but it wasn't a case of one person had stopped and the other one hadn't. But what it was one person was on slower tyres. Would they be able to catch the other person? And was Piastri, at first we thought Piastri was going to come in for fresh tyres. So it was a question of, can Norris get close enough to Piastri before Piastri comes into tyres? I just liked the simplistic strategy in the race, the way it played out. Often these races are extremely complicated with numerous pit stops, numerous tyre compounds being used, numerous safety cars, numerous virtual safety cars, just a complete mess. The races are often, and this just seemed a little bit simpler the way it panned out, which I liked. But yes, it wasn't that one had stopped and the other one hadn't stopped, so it's not exactly the same as the 1987 French and British Grand Prix, but the simplicity of what you're watching reminded me of those races from 38 years ago. Piastri was very good with his time management. He didn't make any mistakes. Maybe he made the odd little one, but nothing that cost him as much as what Norris lost from his 2 or 3 mistakes. Very small mistakes, but Norris was right on the edge, but it's still quick mistake. That's Lando, unfortunately. And I still am very concerned, as someone who wants Norris to win the championship, as I've said before, since and including Austria, I have felt more and more so that Piastri is the favourite. Before Austria, I thought Norris was going to win the championship, even though Piastri was winning most of the races. But then despite Lando winning in Austria and Silverstone, I was thinking, actually, I think Piastri may well take this championship, because since and including Austria, he's by and large been faster than Norris. And that has that spooked me a little bit, that has. So 16 points. What's going to happen next week with the Hungarian Grand Prix? What do we think is going to happen? I mean, if Norris comes second again, and the interviewer would no doubt say to Lando, "Oh, you're second, and that's still a big haul of points." It's not a big haul of points if your teammate has scored even more points. It doesn't matter if it's a big haul of points. If the guy you're fighting in the championship has taken home an even bigger haul of points. Anyway, if Lando wins in Hungary, I hope he wins on merit. I don't want it to be inherited. I don't want Piastri to sort of crash and Norris suddenly takes over the lead in the championship. That would be a hollow victory. That doesn't mean that I think Norris absolutely inherited the win at Silverstone, because it must be remembered that Norris had closed a 9-second gap and was all over the back of Piastri at Silverstone before Piastri came in for his pit stop and penalty. Norris was all over the back of him. So who's to say that had there not been a penalty there, who's to say that Norris wouldn't have got past Piastri? I think he would have. I think Norris would have won that win regardless of the penalty, because he had closed right up on the back of him. Yeah, okay, helped by the safety car, admittedly, because Piastri did have a healthy lead. So you could say that Norris's win was aided by the safety car. There was probably more than one safety car, wasn't it? But the first safety car that wiped out Piastri's lead, I would say that aided Norris's win far more so than just the penalty, because Norris had already closed in that gap, that 9-second gap. But would he have closed in a bigger gap had there not been a safety car? Anyway, but I don't think it's a straightforward thing of saying that Norris inherited that win. But for me, Piastri is the one that is driving the best at the moment. Norris is on the ragged edge and is very quick, but because he's on the edge, he makes mistakes. And this year he's been making more mistakes than normal, although it has to be said he did make a few last year as well. Anyway, I haven't really spoken about anybody else, have I? That's because it's all about Norris and Piastri at the moment. Leclerc, very good performances. I think his 4th podium in the last 6 races. He had a 2nd at Monaco, didn't he, as well? I mean, it's very good. Verstappen slipping away in the championship, although that sprint race, very good win in the sprint race, but he just had to get ahead and then defend, and he defended extremely well. But I will always say that he's not in a rubbish car. So I know that everybody, including most especially Max, seems to advertise the fact that the car is a piece of poo. It isn't, basically. It is if somebody else tries to drive it. It's a bit like a suit, yeah? You get a tailored suit. You could spend hundreds on a tailored suit, right? It fits perfectly. Now go and lend it to your next door neighbour. The next door neighbour tries it on, it won't fit. Does that mean the suit is rubbish? No, it's just that the suit has been tailor-made for one person. And the Max Bull has been tailor-made for Max, understandably, because he's the big man, isn't he? The number one. But a Red Bull have clearly gone too far in that direction, and nobody else can drive the car that Max wants. But it's the perfect car for Max. So it's not Max somehow managing to do well in a rubbish car, because the car is perfect for Max. You stick Max in a different team and you might see not such a great performance by Max in the races. I'd love to see Max in a different team next year. It won't happen. Maybe 2027. Next year he'll be in the Red Bull though. But 2027, unless if the Red Bull is in the same sort of position it is now in the championship, then I can see him definitely moving in 2027 or retiring, one of the two. And I'd love to see Max in a different car because he's so comfortable. It fits him like a glove. He's so comfortable in that car. That makes it easier for him, basically. Bortoleto had a better race than Hulkenberg today. Albon, fantastic, 6th place, 5th in qualifying, 6th in the race, held off Hamilton. That Williams is fast though, isn't it, in a straight line. Russell, still a good performance, I think, because I don't think the Mercedes should have been there really. I think probably the Williams and the Ferrari should have been the other side of the Mercedes. Bearman, 11th for the 4th race running. Hulkenberg, not so lucky this time. Tsunoda, very good in qualifying, 7th in qualifying. But in the race, slipped down. He got held up. Who was he held up behind? Oh, I think Tsunoda and Bearman were held up behind Gasly for a long time. Stroll, Ocon, Antonelli, Alonso, Sainz, Colapinto. I don't know what happened to Hadjar. Not sure there. But look at this, Red Bull, 192 points. 185 of those 192 were scored in the Max Bull, with the other 7 being scored in the Red Bull. Well, it's not a Red Bull, is it? The other car is also a Max Bull. That's the problem. If only they could make a Max Bull for Max and then a normal Red Bull for the teammate, then it'd be a lot better, but they can't. Setup can be different between the 2 Red Bulls, of course, but not the basic design of the car. There you go. Look at all the teams scoring quite well. Alpine, 20 points. And yet they're still last, which I think is the most number of points. Someone pointed that out to me, actually, in a comment. That's the most number of points from someone who's last in the championship. I think by the end of the year as well, 20 probably is. So it's a bit of a shame that Alpine is still 10th. Shame for them anyway. Right, so this has ended up being 32 minutes long. Sorry if I'm ranting a little bit. Maybe I am ranting a little bit. Anyway, so that's just my general thoughts. I just talk off the cuff, basically. Don't necessarily do it in any structured fashion. It's just whatever I want to talk about. It's as if I'm just talking to a friend. I'm just chatting about the race. Different things come into my mind at different times. Anyway, as I said at the start of the video, the Hungarian video will probably be short, even shorter. Well, actually, I say even shorter. This is not short, is it, this one? The Hungarian video will probably only be about 15-20 minutes long and will probably be based on just highlights. I won't have seen anything else, any chit-chat after the race. Just highlights, unfortunately, probably. We'll see. We'll see what I can do. Right, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so. If you'd like to like the video or comment on the video, please do so. Or leave a tip on the thanks button below the video. But mainly, thank you for watching. And I will see you, as I say, hopefully, same time next week. Hopefully it'll be the Monday. I can't guarantee though, because I will not be in the country. Right. Thank you very much. I will be in the same time zone though. I'll be in Lanzarote, so that is the same time zone at least, which might help a little bit with the release. Right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you and goodbye.